Hola, Gringos and Gringos, and welcome to
Gringos on the Run.
Expats with Plan.
I'm Mark.
I'm Gina.
This week we got a little something special for you. We're going to introduce you to Amy Whitney from Expat Spanish. It's a class that we looked at and we are going to be doing, and we're wanting to give you all the rundown of it. So here, with no further ado, is Amy from Expat Spanish. Welcome,
Hi,
Amy.
Gina. Hi, Mark. How are you guys doing? ¿Cómo están?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Muy bien, gracias. Thanks for having me here and doing this interview. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, we're glad to have you. So both of us struggle with Spanish. Me, much more than him.
Okay.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Expat Spanish and some of your background, please?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Amy Whitney, as you can see on the screen there. I'm from Kelowna, British Columbia, which is in Canada, and I've been living in Mexico and Puerto Vallarta for the last 7 years full time. Now, a lot of people, they think, oh, you've been living in Mexico for 7 years. That must be how you learn Spanish. And as you guys know, I'm sure very, very well, there are lots of people that have been living here for years in Mexico and they still don't speak Spanish. And that's not actually how I learned either. Unfortunately for me, I was one of those people that had a really, really hard time learning languages, and in my case, Spanish. I was putting in the work, doing everything I needed to do, learning the vocabulary, working on the grammar, trying to figure this out. Studied with Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, textbooks, 5 years of high school Spanish, immersion things. Didn't matter. I was still stuck at that pretty useless beginner level for a very, very long time. And, I think the hardest part or the reality of this situation was I was doing all this studying, but when I went out into the real world, it was like a wall of like Charlie Brown coming at me. I couldn't understand anything. And when I wanted to speak, it was like, I don't know, it was like a marathon in my head of grammar exercises before the sentence came out, and it really took forever. So I realized, embarrassingly, 14 years, I was stuck at this very basic level, a beginner level of Spanish. And, I couldn't figure out why I was having such a hard time because I was able to learn other things, and uh, I wanted to believe that learning a language wasn't, some magic formula that only people could do. But I was having a really, really hard time with it. And, that difficulty that I was facing started to lead to that self doubt of, is it me? Am I the problem? Am I just one of those people that can't actually learn languages? Right? I wanted to learn. I was putting in the work. I had the right intention, but I wasn't getting the results. So when you don't get the results, that ends up leading to this kind of area where you start doubting yourself and trying to justify why this isn't happening. That leads to low motivation. And a lot of people give up. Again, 14 years. I don't know why I'm so determined, but it was way too long.
Well, you didn't do the give up part, that's for sure.
No, I didn't give up. And I think it's because deep down I'm a language nerd and I just really am fascinated by language. And it's so cool when you can talk to other people in another language. So I wanted to have that. But, the thing is that, like, being here in Mexico, I mean, I already had a Spanish level when I arrived, but being here in Mexico, living in the Spanish speaking world, this is something that is so, so important for all of us. If you want to be able to just really live the best version of your life in Mexico, you're going to need the language. There's no doubt that this is something that we need to do. So we're kind of, a lot of us find ourselves stuck in this position of wanting to learn, doing the work, not seeing the results, knowing why we need to have it. And when we can't, we start to justify that it's not our fault and we're going to give up. This language thing isn't for me. And we don't want to have that happen. So, how did I learn this language? Because obviously I'm teaching it now. The thing is that with my studies, what I was doing, there was a lot of reading, writing, fill in the blanks, doing grammar exercises, memorizing vocabulary. But as I mentioned before, when I went out and tried to speak and understand, I didn't have the skills that I needed. That's what was missing. So I
Sounds
started,
familiar.
what was that, Mark?
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I was at my point of maximum frustration about to give up as well. And I decided to just do something that was radically different than what was kind of presented as how to learn languages. So, I found some spoken Spanish conversations with a transcript and painfully went through them, trying to break it down and figure out what vocabulary was being used and train my ears somehow. I didn't know what I was doing, but eventually I figured out that the words, a lot of the vocabulary that I had been taught wasn't the stuff that was used in everyday spoken Spanish. And as soon as I had that core vocabulary that I needed, that helped me to start understanding things that I was hearing. And when I needed to formulate sentences, I was much more familiar with, this type of vocabulary I needed, and I was able to start putting it together. And within less than a year, I managed to get up to an advanced level. So it was really focusing on the right things that allowed me to unlock the door to Spanish. So, why expat Spanish? Well, because I know that I'm not the only one with this problem. When you look around, I'd say 90% of the people aren't conversational. Like, they know a few words, they can kind of get through life, like bumbling your way through life, but it's not really what we want, and there's a little bit of, we want to speak, we're trying, we're putting in the effort, but really what we want is to connect with the people, right?
Mhm.
So, what I know that people need is, first of all, to believe they can do this, right? They need to sign up, they need to do a course, not be immediately hit with a whole bunch of overwhelming grammar and difficult things, but rather a type of Spanish that they're like, okay, I can see that I would actually be using this right away. This seems easy. It seems like something I can do. So if you have that kind of foundation where you're learning practical Spanish in a situation that you're going to be facing immediately, this is really going to allow us to start going out and using the Spanish in real situations, which comes back because you feel satisfied that, hey, I learned something that I'm able to use. It keeps you motivated and wanting more. So that's a huge part of what we do. It's about, teaching practical stuff that matters and doing it at a pace that makes people feel okay, that, they're not getting left in the dust, and, just focusing on the things that matter instead of filling your head with details that you don't really need to know right now at this stage in the game. So that's what I do.
Well, and that makes totally logical sense. I mean, when we went to your website and started looking at some of the examples and things like that, I'm quickly looking at it going, okay, you're going to help me walk down to the sixth store or the OXXO and
Mhm.
be able to do a transaction. Well, you
Yes.
know what? Those are things that we're all going to run into. And
Mhm.
you got to learn to do the baby steps. You got to walk before crawl before you walk before you run. So this looked like that's why what intrigued us. It looked like a good way of getting us, on the crawl on the way to walking. And then,
Mhm.
hopefully next year we can be maybe
Conversation.
jogging. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's a
But
really good point that you brought up, actually, about the walking before you run and, looking at the situations that we're facing. So, this is actually where the time I spent in Mexico, where the expat Spanish part came from, because I was finding myself in the same dozen situations where I'm like, okay, I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for an item, and, I don't know how to ask where it is, for example. Or am well, I knew how to ask where it was, but, a lot of people, that's the situation that we
yeah,
face, right? We
no.
need to ask where an item is. We need to ask about the prices. We need to order tacos like a pro from a taco stand. Very important. Muy importante. But, like, I thought, oh, okay, this stuff is really the easy stuff, but it's also the stuff that a beginner, like when you're starting to learn Spanish, when we look at apps like Duolingo, what are they teaching you? Are they teaching you any of that stuff? And, if that's the stuff that I'm facing today, right now, shouldn't that be the stuff that I'm focusing on first? Because if you don't use it, you lose it. So like, what's going on there? You know?
Well, and the other part of that really is what appealed to me a lot was the hearing and
Mhm.
being able to understand, because I'm tired of looking at computer screens or a clerk having to take a calculator and put the numbers up and hold it up to me so
Yeah.
I know how much it costs, because it rattle those numbers off and I'm sitting there going, and I'm looking around at the screen knowing how big of a bill to pull out to give to them. So,
That's right. Yeah. With listening comprehension, this is something that everybody really, it's a big concern. It's something that people often complain about. And there's a couple of things that are going on. So first of all, it's a lack of vocabulary because if you don't know the word, how are you going to understand? I mean, maybe enough times in context you'll figure it out, but for the most part it's about vocabulary. The second part is actually training your ear because we have English filters on our ears and we can't often hear Spanish sounds. Our brain like omits it and says, that's not important. I don't need to listen for that thing. And really, the hack that we can do early on to narrow the field with listening is when you're in those situations, what are those people on the other side of the counter? What are they saying? What should I be listening for? Because I mean, if you walk into a situation and you have no context, I mean, you're listening for a wide range of could be anything. But if you're walking into a store and there are 5 or 6 questions that maybe they're going to be asking you or variations of those questions, just being able to hear that can be significant, to
mhm.
help you to get through the situation. I mean, the speaking side is the other part, but if you can't understand, how do you reply? Right?
Well, you can't have a conversation if all you're ever doing is talking.
That's
You
right.
gotta, you gotta do the hearing. That's called the second part of the conversation.
That's right. Otherwise, it's like talking to a post. Deer in the headlights, maybe.
Oh,
Awesome.
well,
So,
I've run into those issues that you've brought up, though. I have. And
yeah,
I can't find something in a grocery store. I don't
mhm,
even know how to approach someone to ask them where I might find it.
that's
Just for an
right.
example. So yes, I've run into these issues.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, well, when I was traveling, we didn't have like cell phone data was ridiculously expensive. So no cell phones, no Google Translate. And, being back in those years when I was a beginner and really struggling with it, I I know exactly what that's like. Like you need to ask for something and you don't have the words, you don't know what to say. So, Google Translate is helpful to some degree, but it's also I don't know. It's just better. If you can just ask, it's just better.
Well, Google Translate makes it impersonal. Whereas
Yes.
when you're having a conversation, it's warmer and the people are more apt to want to help you.
Yeah.
Well, and I've learned this from my friend Juanjo, that
Mhm.
there are certain phrases that I try to say in Spanish with, and I use Google Translate, but they don't translate well into Spanish in Mexico because it's a phrase that makes no sense to them at all.
Yes,
No,
very,
like
very true.
my eyes are bigger than my stomach. He and his wife looked at me like
Oh
I
my
was
God,
crazy.
yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? So it's not even just the vocabulary and how to
Yeah.
say it. It's rather it's even something that would even be said here in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a dialect here in Mexico, and within Mexico, we have different regions that are going to have different ways of expressing things, which makes it even more overwhelming for people. But making sure that you're learning Mexican Spanish, which is definitely what I specialize in. Like people are, expat Spanish. Oh, what do you do? Do you teach, Spanish in Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, those countries? And it's like, no, the Spanish I know is here in Mexico. And just being able, if we have to learn vocabulary, like a certain amount, it's so frustrating learning words and then later realizing that those aren't the words that they actually use here and having to relearn the right or normal way, to express those ideas. So,
Well,
yeah.
then you hit the Yucatan and you throw in the Mayan, and then
Yeah.
because a lot of them here speak. It's almost like saying I'm going to go to Louisiana because you're going to get Cajun.
Creole.
which is a little French, a little Creole, a little English. We throw it all together, and they know exactly what they're talking about. The rest of the world looking at them going, "Huh?"
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
that's funny. Wow, I haven't been to that side of Mexico yet, but it would be really interesting to hear the dialect and how they speak in that region for sure.
the
Awesome.
only part we figured out is when you start hearing a lot of clicks, it's mine.
Then okay.
It's
Oh,
mine.
interesting. I didn't know there was clicking in the language. That's very, very cool.
A lot of X's, K's, and so when you start hearing that, you go, "Okay, that's mine." So don't
Yeah,
even we don't even try to understand because we don't have prayer. So it's hard enough
yeah,
for the Spanish.
exactly. Would you guys like to do a trial lesson? I have one that I have queued up here. Would you guys like to see what
Yeah,
one of our lessons is
yes,
like?
I think our viewers would love to see this in a little more detail.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
So I'm just going to bring this up. Okay, perfect. Are you able to see that on the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, what we're going to be doing here is just a short lesson that's going to show us how we can order in Spanish. This is not just in a coffee shop, this is going to be applicable for a wide variety of food or drink ordering situations. So, we're actually going to be learning two different ways that we can order at the sizes that we use, particularly here in Mexico, to talk about food and drink sizes, common replies and questions that you might hear during the situation. And then at the very end, we're going to be doing a role play where you're going to be able to go through this whole thing without reading what's on the screen. It's going to be 100% up to you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get started. The first one here that we're going to learn is how to say I want in Spanish. And we have a couple of pictures here on the screen just to help you with the pronunciation. If there's a lot of vowels together, that can be kind of overwhelming. So we have the first part here, which is key, and then we have arrow. Obviously, we need to say that like Spanish. So quiero, quiero. And that's how we get this. Quiero. And at the very end here, we can see that there's an O that's underlined. That part there is saying I. And the first part, the Quieer, is actually expressing want in Spanish. So when we put it together, quiero means I want. We can see this other word, yo, okay? And that one also means I, but I have it in brackets because this is something that's optional. And in Spanish, native speakers often drop yo in the language because it's redundant. So we're not going to be practicing that because if we're not hearing it in these types of interactions, we don't want to teach the students to become reliant on it in their communication. So if you're going to hear quiero, that's what we're going to teach you means I want. So, just to show you for comparison of how we know who wants what in Spanish, we're going to look at you want, and we can see again, tú, this means you, and it's in brackets because it's optional. And we can tell that it's you wanting something because it ends with es instead of o. So, quieres, that sound es is going to mean you, quier means want, quieres is you want. For this lesson here, we're just going to focus on quiero because you're the one that is going to be talking about what you want from the coffee shop. All right, so we've got the first word here, which is cafe. Okay. Anyone who drinks coffee, like Mark, needs to. It's not coffee?
Refresco.
Oh, refresco. Okay, muy bien. Oh, Gina's the coffee drinker. Okay, so Gina needs to know this dialogue super well. We have café is how we say coffee in Espanol. And we have this here. If we want to say a coffee, we're going to say un and then the word for coffee. When we're making this sound, the UN in Spanish, what we want to make sure that we do is create a circle with our lips because if we don't get the Spanish accent. So to give you an example, we have un versus un. Do you hear that difference?
Uh-huh.
One sounds very English and one sounds like Spanish, right? So, Gina, how would you say, ¿cómo se dice a coffee in Spanish?
Un café.
Muy bien. You got that lip circle thing going on. Great job. Okay. Un café. All right. Now we have I want a coffee. This is our first short sentence that we're making. So, Mark, ¿cómo se dice I want a coffee?
Quiero un café.
Muy bien. Quiero un café. And you excluded that yo at the front, which is perfect. That's what we want to do. Okay. And Gina, do you know how to say please in Spanish?
Por favor.
Por favor. Excelente. Por favor. And Gina, you get the full sentence this time. How do you say, ¿cómo se dice, I want a coffee, please?
Quiero un café, por favor.
Excelente. Muy bien. Quiero un café, por favor. Okay. And we've got another hot beverage. I am not a tea drinker here in Puerto Vallarta. It is way too hot. But just in case you are, you might want to have té. Okay, so we're going to say this like té. And let's see here. So, Mark, how would we say a tea?
Un té.
Un té. Uh-huh. And we've got another way that we can place our order for things. Instead of quiero, we can also say para mí. Now, as English speakers, when we see this word para, we automatically think about parachutes and paramedics, and we get that para sound. But what we need to say here is that nice short a, like hola, that a. That's what we're going to do here. So, para mí, para mí. Okay. Do you want to try, Gina?
Sure. Para mí.
Para mí, muy bien. ¿Y Mark?
Sí, para mí.
Para mí, excelente. Okay. And Gina, how about this? For me, a coffee.
Para mí, un café.
Mhm. Para mí, un café. Okay. And now we've got two different ways that we can order something. Now, if you've been living in Mexico for a while, you might think that, going to the menu and pointing and being like, quesadilla, por favor, is a complete thought. But in Spanish, it doesn't really sound like a complete thought. So, really, there's two advantages of just adding on this little word ahead of whatever you want with por favor. First of all, it's going to help you to practice new things that you've learned, but it also helps you to sound like it's like a competent thought. You're ordering something, you're asking for something. And we've got either quiero, por ejemplo, quiero dos tacos al pastor, por favor, quiero una cerveza, whatever you want, por favor. All right. We can do the same thing with para mí. Okay, more words. So we've got grande. Anyone in the world that has been to Starbucks probably already knows this one. And we've got large coffee in Spanish. So, Gina, taking a hint from that arrow that's on the screen, how do you think you say large coffee?
Café grande.
Excelente. Okay, so we have to switch the order. First, we say what it is we're talking about, and then we add the descriptive word after. Café grande. Okay. And Mark, ¿cómo se dice? I want a large coffee.
Quiero un café grande.
Ujú, muy bien. Quiero un café grande, por favor. Ujú. And do either of you know how to say small in Spanish?
Quito.
Pequeño.
Okay, yeah. This is a tricky one. When I ask that, people are like, poquito. Poquito is kind of like a little bit in terms of quantity. And pequeño, yes, that's an alternative way of saying small. But here in Mexico, when we're talking
Chico.
about food, chico. When we're talking about food and drinks in Mexico, we're going to use chico and chico, mediano, grande. Those are the sizes.
And the other place you see that is clothing.
That's
You'll
right,
see
clothing.
You'll see a CH in
Mhm.
the tag or a
Exactly.
small.
Yep. So if you're ever wondering what the CH is on the menu board on the shirt tag, that's going to be chico, and it's referring to the size exactly. Okay, so now we've got small coffee. Mark, ¿cómo se dice small coffee?
Cafe Chico.
Mhm. Café chico. So you remembered that reverse order. I didn't give you the hint this time, but you remembered it. That's great. All right. And Gina, ¿cómo se dice? I want a small coffee.
Quiero un café chico.
I have never heard her say that in her life. And I've known her a long time. I've
I
never
know there's
heard her
something.
ask for a small coffee.
I'm always like, who would order a small? So, realmente quieres un café grande, ¿sí? So you want a large coffee, but she's like, I'll say it just because it's what's on the screen.
Siempre.
Sí.
Yeah.
Quiero un café chico. Uh-huh. Okay, now we've got another word that we need to learn here, which is or. And in Spanish, this is going to be just one letter, and it's o. And we're going to do, instead of oh, like we like to do in English, we're going to say uh-oh, like that nice short o. Oh, okay. And Mark, how would we say small or large?
Chico o grande.
Mhm. Chico o grande. That was really good with the nice short o. And Gina, ¿cómo se dice? I want a coffee.
Quiero un café.
Quiero un café. Oh, I've got por favor. It's like supposed to be in there, but okay. And Mark, do you know the word for more in Espanol? Más. Ajá. Perfecto. And we've got here algo más. So we've already learned that más means more and algo means either something or anything. So when we put this together, algo más, this is going to be a person asking you, would you like to have anything else? Right? Anything else? Is that everything? Algo más. It's really, really common. Have you guys heard this out in restaurant situations?
See,
No.
See, no. All right, all right. It's very common. Gina, you're going to start hearing it all the time now.
Okay.
So, do either of you know how to say nothing in Spanish?
nada.
Nada. Sí, perfecto. Nada. So, Gina, if we wanted to say nothing more, what do you think that would be?
Nada más.
Mhm. Nada más. Excelente. All right. Now, what we're going to do is an actual role play. The pressure is on, right? So I'm going to go through what we're going to see in this conversation here. I'm going to be the pink bubbles that are on the one side. You guys are going to be the blue bubbles, okay? So, hola, buenos días. Depending on the time of day, we might hear buenas tardes, buenas noches, for example. And we've got this. You also need to say buenos dias. Super important. The greetings here in Spanish or in Mexico are very, very important. Probably more than they are in English. So even if you're thinking about quiero, 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 and you're just trying to use that, I would really rather you go into the place, they hit you with whatever they hit you with, but you need to stop and be like, hola, buenos dias, and then go ahead and place your order. That's something that culturally is really important. So don't worry about forgetting the next thing. Just make sure that you greet people. That's step one of cultural etiquette here. So we've got a phrase. This is one of the phrases that you might hear, which is ¿qué te ofrezco? Or you might hear it as ¿qué le ofrezco? Depending if the person is speaking to you informally or formally. At this point in time, as a beginner, it's probably just going to be like, "Brr, brr, brr," and you're like, okay, context tells me they're probably asking for my order. But you may start to hear this in these conversations. So when we look at this, que means what, te means you, ofrezco means offer. And we can see here that the O that's at the end of ofrezco, that means I am the one offering. Just like quiero, the O that's at the end says I want. So we've got que te ofrezco, que le ofrezco is going to be what can I get for you? What can I offer you? And you'll order your coffee or tea. And I'll ask if you want small or large. You'll say the size, chico o grande. And algo más Would you like to have anything else? No, nada más, gracias. Muy bien, enseguida. So this last part here, muy bien means very good. Enseguida means right away, coming up right away. I'm on it. I'll do that now. Something like that is how we can interpret it. So this is how it's going to go. Now that we've gone over this one in Espanol, because this is the muy fácil. This is very easy. We can just read along, right? But I think you guys are more advanced. So we're going to skip to this one here. I'm giving you some credit, hey? So we have here, the prompts are going to be in English, so you actually have to go into your head and remember this. Now, for students that I'm working with, some of them have a notepad beside them and they're writing down everything. And when I see their eyes drifting over to their paper for the notes, I remind them, look, we need to go into our head first and try to recall this information. If you don't know where it is, you can look at your paper after, right? If you can't remember it. But when we're speaking in real situations, we don't have a piece of paper. So we need to just go into our head and use what we know. So let's go ahead and try. Okay, Gina, do you want to go first? She's like, I'm scared. Okay.
Everybody gets to watch me goof.
It's okay. You'll be fine. And you know what? People shouldn't be embarrassed when they're learning Spanish. We need to just be really gracious with ourselves, right? That this is something new and it's hard. And it takes a lot of courage that you guys are doing what you're doing right now. So, especially like, it's going to go out to people, right? Okay, let's do this. Hola, buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Qué le ofrezco?
Quiero un café.
Un
Por
café.
favor.
Muy bien. ¿Chico o grande?
Muy grande.
Muy grande. Ok, excelente. ¿Algo más?
Oh gosh, now I'm lost. No, nada más.
Sí, perfecto. Sí, no, nada más. Gracias. Ajá. Ok, muy bien. Enseguida. Okay, Gina, that was good. Let's do this one more time with you all the way through so that you can get that flow that you're looking for.
Wow. Okay.
And if you're struggling a little bit with this one, we'll do it twice, just so that you can really feel how it is to have this conversation in a smooth way. Hola, buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Qué le ofrezco?
Quiero un café, por favor.
Un café, muy bien. ¿Chico o grande?
Grande, por favor.
¿Algo más?
Nada más, gracias.
Ok, muy bien. Enseguida. Excelente. Muy bien. Okay, Mark. Do you want to try?
I have no problem with it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, muy bien. Hola, buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Qué le ofrezco?
Quiero un té, por favor.
Un té, muy bien. ¿Chico o grande?
Chico.
Chico, ok. ¿Algo más?
No, nada más, gracias.
Muy bien, enseguida. Okay, let's do this again. Hola, buenos días.
Hola, buenos días.
¿Qué le ofrezco?
Un café, por favor.
Un café, muy bien. ¿Chico o grande?
Grande.
Grande, ok. ¿Algo más?
Nada más, por favor.
Ok, muy bien. Enseguida. Okay, that was great. Both of you did an excellent job. And how do you feel about this type of dialogue? Do you feel like you might be able to go out and use it a little bit later today?
I'll use it. I'll use it. Yes.
Yeah, you just go out and use it. And, the first time that you go out, you might even have to have a sticky note with you just because you get nervous in that situation. So having quiero, you'll remember un café, but quiero on your sticky note. So, hola, buenos días. And you're like, okay, I think that was que le ofrezco, or maybe it was something different. There are many ways of asking what you would like to have. And you're going to respond, quiero un café. So you look at your note and you gain confidence. And little by little, you'll be able to get through this situation and understand and order without your notes. So step by step, paso a paso. Awesome. So there we are. That's what one of our beginner lessons is like. And what do you guys think? Is this practical Spanish? Like Mark, how long have you been working on Spanish? What have you been doing?
2 years with Duolingo.
2 years.
Yeah, it's, you know, I have a uh, fair maybe an over exaggeration. I have a decent vocabulary.
Uh-huh.
Duolingo doesn't give you a whole lot as far as the grammar,
Mhm.
and the worst part is the comprehension, para escucho,
Mhm.
because it's a computer voice,
Okay.
which you're not going to run into too many computer voices out there at the
Mhm.
Mercado.
Mhm.
And the other part is it's very difficult to differentiate the sounds.
Right.
So I I have been known to get extremely frustrated at times, and at other times I can blow
Mhm.
right through it. But that's
Right.
the comprehension of the spoken word back to me,
Yeah.
and that's the part because I will progress faster
Mhm.
in being able to have a conversation with somebody when that part when I turn the English part of the brain off and am able to start quickly understanding, oh, that's what they're telling me. Right now, it's concentrate on the first word, concentrate on the second
Mhm.
word, concentrate, and they're on the eighth word. And I'm
That's
still
right.
back here in the
Mhm.
first three trying to go, he's telling me what?
And
Oh,
you know what the worst part is when that's happening? There are 2 types of words, right? There's one like hola, you're like, "Oh, that means hello." And you don't have to think about it, right?
right.
You hear it, boom, instant recognition and you know it. But you know the ones that really trip you up are the ones that you know it and you're like, "I know that. What is it?" And you're going into your brain and trying to find that definition, and while you're doing that, 40 other words are going by,
And,
right?
and, and the part that gets really confusing in speaking with, Spanish speakers down here, which, that's everybody just about,
Yeah.
is when they start putting the low, lay, te, to,
Yeah.
all the pronouns that they start
Yeah.
sticking, and sometimes they put them in the front, sometimes they put them on the back of the word, and
That's right.
visita, and then it's no visitaste, and you're like,
What are
hold on,
you
I
talking
know, I
about?
know,
Yeah.
I know the root word, and by
Yeah.
the time you figure it out, and then go lay, lace. Oh, they're talking
Yeah,
about porn.
exactly.
And now, oh, good. I got the first part of the sentence and they're at the end of the paragraph. And you're going,
Mhm,
what?
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
the
it's, that grammar stuff that you're talking about is quite advanced, and, it's something that definitely we need to have like, we can't ignore it, we kinda it comes up, like today, "Que te ofrezco," right? That "te" means you, and that's what you're talking about in this situation,
Mhm.
for sure, but it's little by little and, making sure that with the comprehension part, like, a lot of people are like, just watch movies. There's a lot of bad advice about listening out there for sure. But I mean, movies are for native speakers, right? When
Yeah.
you're just trying to understand the basics of a simple sentence, even in the present tense, this is, way beyond what you're
Uh-huh.
doing. I mean, okay, it's okay for exposure, I guess, but to really break through your listening, it's going to have to be a lot more intentional with what you're doing, and to make sure that you're working with content that's right for your level, because otherwise you get frustrated, just like you were talking about, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, I was thinking about earlier, before we did this interview. I mean, I'm very, very excited to be here to talk to you guys and talk about what we do for your audience. Because I know, like, are most of your audience, are they living in Mexico or are they coming soon? Because you guys are kind of like the
It,
expats with a plan, you know?
I think it's kind of 50-50.
it's
Yeah.
pretty close. I mean, when we first started, yes, it was the majority of the people who were subscribing. It was probably 80%
Yeah.
looking to move and
Mhm.
20% that were recent movers here.
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
and now that, I mean, tomorrow is actually our 1 year anniversary. And so
Oh,
now that we have been down here, it's really taken on a life of its own of almost 50-50 of people from all over the
right.
globe who are
Mhm.
looking to relocate to Mexico.
And
So,
I would say
Mhm.
over 80% of our audience are English speakers.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have people that English is their second language, but obviously we need them to be advanced, English speakers to really get the benefit from our course because we're going to explain the grammar rules and thing in your language so that you're not, wow, what is going on? I don't understand. And also doing it from an English speaker's perspective, because I mean, I've been through that game of, wow, this doesn't make any sense. And I've created my own story about how, to think about these things. Well, Mark, before we recorded today, we actually did a Spanish level evaluation quiz that I put together to help my students to understand where they need to start with the classes. And it looks like you've got the classic weaknesses that a lot of students have with ser versus estar, time, the higher numbers in Spanish. Living in a world where, 100 pesos doesn't get you very far, those numbers are super important. And I think that our Spanish from Zero Level 2 course is exactly where you need to start, just to
Mhm.
make sure that you get all those foundations down and get the speaking practice that you need. And with you, Gina, you are already like proclaimed, I don't know anything, please start me at the first lesson. Which is totally fine. It's not going to take you long to get where Mark is right now. It's only going to take you 8 weeks to get there. And I think that that's one of the things, Mark, that you've been working on Duolingo for 2 years.
Oh
And
yeah.
what you've been doing in 2 years, we're going to do for Gina in 8 weeks. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's frustrating. Part of it is okay. I spent 2 years
Mhm,
progress only this far, but I
mhm.
progressed this far. And so
Yeah.
I don't look at it as failure. I look at it,
No.
okay, it again, it's back to the crawling, before we walk and
Yes.
we walk before we jog and then jog before we run. And
Yeah.
so maybe I could be jogging by now, but
Yeah. But we're going to
I
get you
am,
running in 8 weeks.
and right now I am somewhat confident to be able to, hold my own
Mhm,
until no hablas despacio. When they
mhm.
start rapido, it's like
Yeah.
put the white flag up because I'm done. It's I need
Yeah.
some ability to be able to have time to
Exactly.
comprehend. So the first
Yeah.
thing, one of the first things I learned was hablas despacio, por favor.
Yeah. Yeah. ¿Puedes
Because
hablar más despacio, por favor? Ujú.
you know,
Exacto. Sí. So, what I would like to do for both of you, because, I really think that one of the things that's more powerful than anything is the experience that people have with
Mhm.
our classes, which is why so many of our students are recommending Expat Spanish and what we do, just because they're like me, the people that struggled to learn. Mark, you've been at it for a while. You're going to feel like you're flying after you get through some of these lessons. And just, that you actually experience what it's like to learn with us and how much more confident you're going to feel with building sentences and speaking and handling situations. But you have to promise one thing: you have to
Okay.
give Gina the opportunity to practice because she is at that lower level and we need all the encouragement we can
Oh,
to be like, "Hey, Gina, you've got this.
Okay,
You've got to
so
place your order."
so
Okay.
let me tell you something right now. Gina
Uh-huh.
had Rosetta Stone,
Mhm.
Pimsleur, Rocket, Gritty Spanish, Duolingo, and something else, and is still nowhere.
That's
So I
right.
think part of what's really important here is accountability.
mhm.
Absolutely. Mhm.
I say I don't have time. It's true. I don't have time. And
Mhm.
something has to give. I have to
Yeah.
make the time. Something else has to
It
give.
has to become a
Mhm.
priority.
But I also feel like doing it on your own
Mhm.
without the assistance of a group or a teacher
Or a
um,
schedule.
or a schedule, right? So I
Mhm.
think having a schedule, having accountability, having a group and or teacher to
Mhm.
help. Yes, I think that's going to be a good.
Well,
Definitely. And
and
one of
she
those
grasps it quickly. I mean,
nice.
languages. I mean, I've seen what she's done in Italian. I've seen what she's done, in her French. It's all right. Got to commit and do it. And once she
Yeah.
does, she'll surpass me. I've always said that once it reaches a certain point, I'm going to be the one over there going, hey, baby, you know,
Yeah. ¿Cómo se
what do
dice?
they say? So,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, that's I'm absolutely certain that you're both going to do very, very well. So I would like to invite you to join us in January to a course. Gina, you're going to be in level 1, and Mark, you're going to join level 2. And we can see how things go, and that way you can give really a candid recommendation about your
oh,
experience
absolutely.
as well. Yeah.
And, and then we want to, in turn, to our subscribers, invite them if they want to come along and participate in the course along with. If you're going to take level 1, you can participate with Gina. If you're going to start after you do the trial to see where you're at and everything
Mhm.
else, take that. If you're going to be in level 2, you'll be in the course with me. So
Mhm.
we'll be able to let you know in January. Well, before January, we're going to start at January. But during our lives coming up in December, we're going to be able to give you exactly what the schedule is going to be for both doing it and participating with Gina in level 1 or participating with me in level 2. So keep
Yeah,
up and pay attention. We'll give you these details coming up in soon,
that's right.
subsequent lives.
Yeah.
And there's more. There's
And
more.
there's
Uh-oh.
more.
There's more. So we've actually put together a special coupon for the Gringos are us subscribers to save 10% on our courses. So I think we can put the coupon and the link down in the description
Yep.
area so that they
Yeah.
can copy that and head over and learn about the courses and things like that. But it's so important for us living here in Mexico that we break through this barrier and start, getting the traction that we need with Spanish and really getting over that early beginner hump of the language barrier and enjoying the journey at the same time. The more Spanish you learn, the better it gets.
And the more culture that you're able to get, the more enjoyment spending time in just dealing with your neighbors and immersing yourself in this fabulous,
Mhm.
fabulous culture that is here in Mexico. And if you really want to get the most out of it, the more Spanish you bring, the faster you get to enjoy the experience.
That's right. And people are so appreciative
Oh,
of even this much Spanish. Like in our minds as learners, and I mean, I've felt this and I've seen other learners as well. We have this expectation that we need to be like rattling off whole sentences fluently in order to make a connection with people. But it's very, very gratifying just, with those simple transactional things with the people you're doing business with every single day. And they see your progress, they see that you're learning, they engage with you more, they're excited, they, you know,
they help you.
congratulate you.
I mean, it's we had a six store tienda
Mhm,
right across the street in Merida.
mhm.
And the 3 months we were there, I got to know both the mother and the son who worked there. And I go in and buy my Coca-Colas and so it was fun. But if I screw up, he would look at me and politely and with a smile give me the correct pronunciation of what I
Oh,
just
that's
got done
nice.
screwing up, and then we laugh about it. So
Mhm.
they love the effort, and if you give
Yes,
the effort, you will get assistance, and you're not going to get ridiculed and put down. That's they are some of the best teachers by just their whole warmth. So
that's right, yeah, and, Spanish speakers, they are very appreciative of any effort at all, so I
mhm.
think it's a couple of words even, you're gonna get recognized for trying when you start stringing together sentences, it's gonna be like, "Oh, you're, like, doing pretty good with Spanish," and you'll be surprised because your reaction will be like, "I am terrible at Spanish. What do you mean, hablo muy bien el español?" It's like, "No, I do not. That was awful." But they're very, very warm about it and encouraging. So, yeah.
The hardest part is a lot of times they want to practice their English,
Mhm.
a lot of them, and so
Yeah.
they they see it as a perfect opportunity to speak, practice their English, but
Mhm.
that doesn't help with my Spanish. So it's sort of I keep going in the Spanish and they
Yeah.
throw back the English, and it's like, hey, if you're getting something out of this, I'm getting something out of this, then we're all happy. So
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great. Do you guys have anything else you want to say or wrap it up from
Well,
here?
I just want to let all of our viewers know that I'm very impressed with the layout of the program.
Yes.
It seems, I know that when you're first learning Spanish, everything seems so incredibly juvenile, but what I love about it is that these are phrases that we actually will use and we
Mhm.
need to know. And that's important because this is everyday life. I don't need to tell somebody that the car is red, you know?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, you
I
need to
need
get
to
that
know.
large coffee as soon as possible.
Right, that's right. I need that large coffee, guys. I need that large coffee. I don't care if the car is red.
That's right.
You know, but we are definitely very appreciative of the opportunity to get into a class, especially me, because I'm so far behind. So thank you for that offer. And
Yeah.
we are going to put a link to your site in the description as well as the coupon code.
Mhm.
And as soon as we know when those classes are up, we will broadcast that. And we would like to invite you back
Oh,
to maybe
Yeah.
a live Q&A with our viewers on one of our live streams.
yeah, absolutely. If yeah, if people want to watch and they've got questions about the course, I mean, I can even do a screen share and show you guys what the inside of the course looks like. It's kind of we do all of our classes online on Zoom. Most of our courses it's just one lesson per week. So Gina, you were worried about time. Your time commitment's probably about 3 or 4 hours per week. That's about half an hour a day. Most people can fit that in. So, that's kind of how it works. We have a live class, and then we've got homework that you're going to do throughout the week by logging into the online course. And they're very interactive activities, not overwhelming, but exactly what you need. So I can show more information about that or whatever people want to see to really feel confident about moving forward with their Spanish experience with us.
Excellent.
Outstanding. Yeah, because I know we got some people it's a common question that we get both on our live sessions and also, in our comments, we get,
Mhm.
how are you learning Spanish? How are you doing this? And if we were really to go back, we did one, I want to say 18 months ago, how we were learning
Mhm.
Spanish. From where we were then to where we are now, not a big progress. I mean, it really
Okay.
has sort of just been, and I think
Very
we
common.
probably, yeah, and we probably learned more, or at least I can't
Mhm.
fail. I have probably learned more interacting with people. You know,
Mhm.
Duolingo has given me the palabras, the
Yeah.
ability to understand some words, but interaction has given me much more than
Mhm.
the computer screen
I
has.
I always say that, with Duolingo, it's a good supplement, but it's not really
Mhm.
the mainstay. That's not gonna be, like, the core program that gets you what you
Yeah.
need fast. It's like it's good for practice and words and things like that. There's nothing wrong with it, but expecting a free app to be your pathway, the shortest, quickest pathway to getting to the goal that you want is not really a
Well, I'm
realistic
living proof.
expectation.
2 years, and okay, I've surpassed level one. I'm up to level two. So I mean, give me about I don't know. By the time I'm 75, I might be level five. So
That's right, that's right. Awesome. Well, thank you so
All
much for
right.
having me on today. It was great chatting with you and talking all about
Yes.
Spanish, and,
Thank you.
I look forward to the Q&A in the next couple weeks with you guys.
Yeah.
yeah,
This was enlightening. Do appreciate you
yes,
guesting on our channel.
Oh,
And
thank you.
again, everyone, we will have the link below for not only the
yep,
coupon, but Amy's website, Expat Spanish. And we will catch up with you and Amy on another live stream coming up soon.
going to be here
Great.
fast and furious, and we'll be ready to start this again in January. So
Yes.
anybody who wants to come along the journey, join us. So
Yes.
as always, we are Gringos are us.
Expats with a plan.
Remember,
We're
we're
doing
doing it.
it. You can too. Hasta la próxima vez.
Adios.
Hasta
Thank you, Amy.
luego.